Hi, everyone. This is Healing Loudly, the podcast. I'm your co host, Dana Skurlock.
And I'm your co-host, Ani Jajarian.
Hi, friend. How are you?
Hi, my love. It's been a week, girl. It's been a
I
week. I don't know.
know.
Something's in the air.
I know.
Something's in the
It's
air
the
this
weather
week.
turned. It's 1,000 degrees outside all of a sudden. Everybody in New York has gone crazy, which happens every summer, but crazy people in the street, people fighting, horns honking. But we're here.
We're here. We're here, girl. We made it. We made it through a week. Okay, give me one word to describe how you're feeling today. It could
How
be all
I'm feeling
encompassing for the
today.
week.
Gosh. Okay. So I can tell you that this week I had family in town, which if anybody is in New York or, is on the East Coast where there's public transportation, it just means it's a very long week when you have people in from out of town. You live in small apartments,
Yeah.
you're running around to the train, you're outside with the elements. So I would
You're
say
with
that
everyone.
although yes, and you're with everyone every second. I feel great. I loved having my family here. I will say though that today I'm feeling a little deflated would be my word. Like the excitement's gone. Everybody left already. Everybody's out of town. It's back to the grind. I'm back to work, but I'm happy to be here. But yeah, I can feel my energy is a little deflated overall. How are you
Mm.
feeling? What's a word to describe how you're feeling today?
I feel like you need some rest, some recoup, like
Probably.
refill your cup. For me, my word
Yeah.
is exploratory. I'm
Ooh,
feeling very like explorational or like exploring, and specifically with the way that I am dressing lately, the way that I'm dressing
good.
nowadays and the way that I want to dress lately. Like right before this, I had some errands to run and I went to go donate some clothes. And then as I was
Good
donating
for
some
you, you
clothes,
good
I was
citizen.
also, but then I was also like checking out what else there is. And I was like, oh my God, like there's so many different ways I can express myself with all these different pieces, and, like,
Yeah.
it's not about it's not about the outfit itself, it's about, like, how you put certain pieces together and, like, what it says about you. So,
Yeah.
I got some stuff, and I'm very excited to start styling them, and I'm just feeling very open to exploring, like, new ways of adorning this beautiful body that I get to have in this
I love the
lifetime,
word
you know?
adorn. I love that. Adorning this body. Well, okay, speaking of the image that you want to project out to the world as you walk through it, today's episode is
Mhm.
about the masks we wear. So, Ani and I have talked for many years about the different identities that we feel like we carry with us just by virtue of being people of color, by virtue of being assigned female at birth, a virtue of just living in a society that is capitalistic and patriarchal and white supremacist. Like, what do we have to do to keep ourselves safe in terms of crafting our identity? And that often, at least for me, has been putting on a lot of different masks and creating these different identities. And so I love that idea of reclaiming like clothing, like you're doing, and making them an expression
Yeah.
not just of being professional or having to go to school and having to present yourself a certain way to society, but what does it mean for me to adorn my own body in a way that represents me in a way that I enjoy? And so I think that that really does like unexpectedly tie into our theme for the day. So good job, Annie. So
Yes!
how do you feel about that subject? Like when you hear the masks that we wear, the different masks that we have to put on, what masks are you wearing? Like what masks have you had to develop over the years?
So many masks, and I feel like it depends on the environment.
Yeah.
And I know that you know this too for yourself. It definitely depends on the environment. There are certain masks that I've had to develop in professional spaces in order to
Mm,
be taken seriously.
yeah.
There's certain masks that I've had to develop, in terms of, like, the culture that I come from. So, we spoke
Yeah.
a little bit last time about, like, being a first generation child of immigrants. Like, I've always been right on the border, like, traversing the line between being American and being Armenian, and,
Hmm.
in both spaces, I've sort of had to switch up the way that I show up, and it's made me
Yeah.
think about how switching up means we need to like, we have this need to assimilate and to feel like we're part of the larger group, because there's like, it signals to the body that there's danger if we are not part of the group, because humans are tribal.
Mm,
So it makes me think, like, why do we develop these masks at all? It's
yeah.
it's out of, like, a primal bodily need for safety, because as folks who are tribal, if you're not a part of the tribe, then the body thinks that there's some danger that's gonna come and get you. So that's why people are afraid to be authentic and individual, and so they develop these masks that are not who they truly are, that are not showing their true essence in order to be part of the larger group. So that being said, I feel like I have done a great deal of work on
Mm,
myself and in my own world to
mhm,
shatter those masks. One of them was being the good Armenian girl.
mm.
It was like the perfect good girl. Doesn't say the wrong thing, isn't too loud, doesn't take up too much space, is really kind but doesn't
There
shine
you go.
too brightly, doesn't rock the boat, doesn't make people angry. So essentially that mask of like excuse me, like the perfect feminine figure in the community
What does that look like in the
stifled my
Armenian
voice.
community to you? Like a perfect feminine figure in the Armenian community? What would that look like?
Just those things like is married, has kids, has a great career, doesn't rock the boat, like has I don't know, just like very traditional, like conservative values, which is just so not me.
Yeah.
But what made that side of that mask start developing throughout my life was recognizing how often my opinions and ideas in certain spaces were not welcome because
Mm,
again, as a New Yorker, like I am assertive and I am outspoken, but I was surrounded by people who and this is not on them, but, like, as a culture and, like, as a country even, we were not encouraged to use our voices in the way that I've
yeah.
always felt really comfortable using my voice and, like, putting
Mhm.
singing aside altogether. So, I essentially stopped speaking my needs. I eventually stopped asking for what I wanted and what I deserved. I eventually started putting my needs aside in order to sacrifice myself for other people and their
Yeah.
happiness, which folks now call people pleasing. And it's just that specific mask, and there's many others we can talk about later, but like that specific mask of hiding the like fierceness and like assertiveness of who I am led to not only losing my true essence, not
Yeah.
completely, but like the stifling of my true essence, like it made me sick. Like it
Mm. Like physically.
like physically, it like manifested in my body like as illness.
Wow.
Because the things that go unexpressed in our system, they need a place to go, and if we don't give it a place to go and we keep repressing certain aspects of ourselves, it's gonna show up somehow, but it's not gonna show up the way that you want it to, and it turns into
Yeah.
things like illness, it turns into mental health concerns like anxiety and
Yeah.
depression and OCD even, and, it turns into autoimmune diseases. It turns into, like, the body fighting itself because there's
Yeah.
something that needs to happen and you're not letting it.
Yeah.
So, this whole like, concept of showing up authentically and choosing to, express myself in the ways that are actually true to who I really am, regardless of how people are gonna perceive me, has been such a process, and it's been difficult, and it's taken a lot of bravery, but I am so much better for it,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
I mean, you're freer. I can tell even since you've like moved to LA in the past couple of years that you come across more free in the things that you say, the way that you say them, the way that you're living your life. I just it's so amazing to like be able to see your transition and like your metamorphosis into this. Like I've always found you to be outspoken, super like assertive, able to give their opinion, but I think sometimes when we look at people like that, we don't realize the cost that it's the toll that it's taking on them to despite the influences from outside sources to be expressive and to be assertive and to say what they think. There's a cost to it, I think,
There is a cost to
emotionally,
it.
and sometimes that you are
Emotionally.
labeled difficult,
Mhm.
abrasive, aggressive. I mean, really and truly that like as, women of color, especially as a Black woman, that is my speaking of
Tell me
masks we
about
wear,
it.
that is like my biggest fear,
Tell me your
and I don't
masks.
even know how it came up because I if you were to ask Dana, like, even when I was, like, 10th grade, if it was okay for people to treat you differently because you're Black, and I would say, "Absolutely not. I will go downtown to the principal's office. office and say this, that, and the other. Like I was very assertive too, but I realize now that even though I was outspoken and even though I was loud and opinionated, society and indoctrination into school and patriarchy and white supremacy beat that out of me over time to the point
Yep.
where when I enter rooms where I'm the only black person or I'm the only person of color, which happens all the time, I go in trying to think of ways subconsciously and consciously to soften my tone, the way that I say things, the words that I choose to use, based around the idea that I don't want them to feel that I'm attacking them or that I'm coming across as aggressive. Not
So
because I
policing
care about
yourself.
policing myself before I even walk in, before I even
Yep.
start speaking. It is like a natural reaction. And in like, again, philosophically, I would never agree to that. But now that you're saying that it actually affects your fight or flight reflex and that
That's
you
right.
always are going to want to fit in with the tribe, that's really interesting because that makes more sense to me why I'm naturally doing it, even going against my own heart, like my own. I would love to defy the systems. If you ask me, I would say I'm a disruptor, and I don't follow like all the rules that everybody else has been set out with, and yet I still find myself doing that. So, for example, like when I was in college, I lived in an honors housing for honor students. It was like a
Yes,
women's
you
house. It was like,
did. Okay,
yes,
honor
I did,
student.
I did. Oh
Yes.
yeah. I lasted a year. I absolutely was, like, the only black girl in there, which was fine. I was used to it. I went to, like, an all-white school growing up, but I went downstairs because we had to do, like, group activities, and we were, like, cooking or something, and my mother gave us chores, and we helped with dinner, and we helped with things at home. So, I'm, kind of helping the other 18, 19-year-olds who have never been in a kitchen before, like, doing things, and this girl who was actually Asian American, but we can get into that, like, if you're adjacent to whiteness or, being another race, even if you're POC, you can still be anti-black. But she looked at me and was like, "Okay, don't hit me." And all I was doing was suggesting that you don't put raw meat with the cooked meat. Something that serious that she was doing. I was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, you don't want to do that." And to her, it was like I was going to physically assault her over it,
It
which
was, like,
obviously I was
aggressive
not.
to her.
That was
You know
aggressive
what?
to
And
her.
that to me begs the question of how people, based on their upbringing and the culture that they come from, how we all emotionally receive the ways that we present ourselves. Because, like, in certain cultures, folks are very outspoken and just, like,
Yeah.
blunt or just sort of, like, say it how it is, and that's the norm, and there's nothing aggressive about that. But then to someone who grew up in an environment where, um, people are typically passive aggressive or they skirt around tough conversations or they
Yeah.
sugarcoat things or they're not completely honest, someone being straightforward about something might come across as rude or disrespectful or too much simply because that's the culture that they come from where no
That's
one
right.
really does that. So they're, like, not
Yeah.
accustomed to it, which I've definitely found as a New Yorker now living in LA.
Really? Oh my
Girl, when
god, tell me about that. Okay.
girl, when I first moved here and I started making friends, like, I just, like, I'm very emotionally open, like, I wear
Yeah.
my heart on my sleeve, and I'm just very, like, "Hi," like, I'll just, like, go up to you and be like, "Hey," and, like, and just spark up
Yeah.
conversation, and I noticed when I would be honest about how I'm feeling about certain things, like, people were taken aback by it out here. There's, like
Really?
yeah, there's, like, an air
That's
of
crazy.
people sort of sugarcoat things in LA. It's all very like, "Yeah, everyone's, like, so nice here," and then, like, behind your back, they're, like, talking shit about you. But in New York, they'll, like,
Mhm.
tell you to your face, like, "What are you
Yeah,
doing?" You know?
yeah, yeah. No, it's no
Anyway, yeah.
holds bar here, and that's what I love about it. No, I regionally even, like, the masks we wear, that just made me think about, like, when I go home to Ohio, because that's where
Yeah.
I'm originally from, and I've lived in New York for 20 years, but when I go home, they find me very, like, quick pace, like, I can't take
Uh-huh.
no for an answer. I'm, like, going into lines at retail stores expecting things to be quicker than they are, and I get a lot of, pushback from family members who, want me to slow down, want me to calm down, and I do think that some of that because these are Black family members, so it's certainly not like racism, I can recognize that it's a regional thing from me being in New York for so long. We are
Mhm.
speaking a language that only New Yorkers speak. Maybe New Jerseyites too, but, like, it's an East Coast thing where we're like, we don't take any mess, and it's like, when it's time to move, it's time to move.
That's
And I
right.
don't wanna lose that. I think that that's a great thing. That's what makes New
Yeah.
York culture itself.
It's beautiful.
But yes, it is another layer of the masks that we feel like we have to have. I think that are mainly shaped by gender, race, etc. Because like when you were speaking about like, oh, I
Yeah.
need to be like a perfect Armenian woman, when I was growing up, I think being like a good student was like one of my
Mm,
most protective masks because school naturally came good, school naturally came easily to me. And I was a good student. Like I studied well. I could, you know, ace tests, whether they were math or English. And so I was like a well-rounded student and I
always
participated in
were.
class a lot. Yeah, I was a little
That's our
smarty
honor
pants. I was like a
student.
straight A
That's
student. I
our
was an
honor
honor
student.
student. Which like I loved. I also loved school. I love learning to this day. I love reading. I'm like totally like a big proponent for like education. I know a lot of people, including like people that I know well, are kind of sick of the regiment of school and think that it's like a mirror for capitalism and making you work in an office from 9 to 5. And it's not really like for your education. It's more to indoctrinate you into a system that makes rich
Depends on
people
what you do
richer.
with it.
Yeah,
Depends on your perspective and what you
absolutely.
do with it, because it certainly can be, which is, like, how public school was designed, but
That's exactly what a lot of people are having. I've heard people expressing lately is that public school was designed just to put you into an industrialized work environment,
yes.
just to get you trained to do
Yes.
that, which is to whose benefit? The people who own the businesses that are going to be making billions. And so I understand people like
Right.
rejecting it for whatever. And some people didn't do well at school naturally. Like, I also don't think that that's like a marker of how intelligent you are, is whether or not you did well in school. But suffice it to say, I did very well. I think that that gave me a lot of cachet within like my family structure because it was something you could always go back to that, like, I'm doing well. And it was something that everybody, especially
Mm.
as Black people
It's
who are,
protective.
you know, desperately trying to move forward socioeconomically and to build generational wealth. How you did in school was a big topic of conversation. We didn't have the luxury of like if you just failed out of school, there was somebody to catch you. There wasn't the luxury of
Right.
if you didn't do well in school, there's going to be a million careers that you can just fall into without having even a high school
There's
degree,
pressure on it.
or that somebody's dad is going to get you a job at their hedge fund, because they think that you have a good attitude and you didn't go to school.
Right.
Like there's no options for us for that. So like doing well in school
The
actually
stakes
was
are
like a big
higher.
is a big deal. The stakes are much higher. And so I think
That's
that
right.
because I didn't consider myself, nor did I feel like I get treated like the pretty one, uh, that wasn't where I found value. I didn't get, I wasn't into sports per se, or like, gaining cachet by being good at basketball or, or lacrosse or some or swimming or whatever, girls were allowed to play. We weren't allowed to play football. But anyway, like all of that to say, like, I think my identity really got shaped around my intelligence. And I often, I think, lead with
Mm.
that because that's the thing that I feel like is the most authentically me because it is something that I cultivated. But at the same time, it is something that I use as like a mask because it's just something that I can get people to tell me I did well at. It's something even like speaking about it in the past tense. People still go, "Oh my god, you're in honors class. Oh, you got straight A's. Oh, you did 2 majors. You have 2 degrees. Oh my god, that's."
Can I ask you something?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. You are so intellectual in so many different ways. Like, people there are some people who are book smart, some people who are street smart. There's, like, different
mhm,
layers and, like, complexities to intelligence and intellect, right? And you are so multi-layered in, like, how perceptive and how observant and how smart you are and, like, the knowledge that you hold, right? And it's definitely a pro. It's one of those masks that you can admit is protective, but there's also like pros to it as well. So my question to you is, if your intelligence wasn't a mask, right? And you could just take that mask of like, look what a good student I am. Look at all this stuff that I know. Look how smart I am. If you
yeah.
took that mask off, what might be underneath that maybe is a little bit scary to reveal to people if you didn't have your intelligence as a shield? What is it shielding you
Yeah.
from?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think that it is shielding me from having to present as Dana. And
Who is
who knows what
Dana?
exactly. Who is Dana and how will they react to Dana? When I was young, I got told to be quiet at dinner every single night. Every
That
single
makes 2 of
night.
us.
I was so loud. This is why we're besties. I was so loud. I talked so much. I sang at dinner every single night. My parents would be like, "You have to calm down. You have to stop speaking so loudly. You can't go in public, being this wild." And so I think that there is something to that mask being protective of the person who I know people are probably going to react to negatively. Like, they're gonna want me to be quiet and shrink anyway, so why don't I come in shrunken, lead with intelligence, lead with something that I can genuinely feel proud of, and then don't get too aggressive, and hopefully people will not be intimidated by me, you respect me for my intelligence, and never know that I have vulnerability inside. I absolutely think that that is a, like, continuing emotional mask I use.
You just used a word that, like, sparked something for me. People
What?
won't be intimidated. What is the consequence for you of people being intimidated by your energetic bigness?
Gosh, it's interesting because when I got into theater, I often was rewarded for the same thing that I often was being punished for in other scenarios. And I
Isn't it
think
always like
that
that?
isn't it always like that? And then but unfortunately, you can't spend your life acting, so you have to learn to just be yourself and cope with being just yourself with and whether people like you. I think that's a big thing to your question is like, why do I put on this mask? What is it protecting me from? What if people don't like me? I'm a huge like people pleaser and I want everybody to like me. Like if I come out of a social situation, I'm like, did so and so hate me? Did they not like me? I know I made that joke. I hope they didn't like take that the wrong way. Like I'm like paranoid that people don't like me when ultimately does it matter if people don't like me? I intellectually understand that it kind of doesn't matter and that no one is going to be liked by everyone. So why even attempt to make it so that everybody in the entire world likes you? I don't like everybody I meet. So why would I expect that of everyone else? But I am
First and
desperate to
foremost,
be
though,
liked.
okay, so let us an aside, if someone doesn't like you, Dana, I wanna meet those people. I wanna know who because I said this in the last episode, you are quite literally one of the most, like, infectiously, like, wonderful, like, just, like, beautiful, like, sunshine people that I know. And so one thing that I've learned on this journey to authenticity, this journey to, like, fearless authenticity, is that when you truly take up space and you're
Yeah.
not afraid to be the parts of yourself that you were previously punished for, it's
Yeah.
gonna it's gonna trigger the people outside of you who have not yet, like, integrated these parts of themselves and likely the sides of themselves that they're ashamed of in some way. And so the greatest way that people, like, make sense of what their beliefs are and who they've taught themselves to be, who they've, like, repressed themselves into being, is
Yeah.
by, like, berating those who somehow go against what they were taught is what a person is supposed to be. So, for example, like someone who was taught that anyone who shows skin in the way they dress is like a slut, right? They're gonna
Yeah.
see someone wearing a short skirt and be like, "What a slut." When really you actually have internalized shame about
Yeah.
showing your body and you have internalized shame about sensuality or, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So, all of this to say, if someone is if someone doesn't like you of all people, they were likely projecting their own, like, self smallness and, like, their own beliefs about how a woman is supposed to be small, a woman is not supposed to take up
Mm,
space, a woman of color is not supposed to speak her mind, a woman of color is too aggressive, you're laughing too loudly, why are you saying so much?
yeah.
That's their stuff. That's their stuff. That's not your stuff.
You
It's
know
not
what?
your
That's a
stuff.
really, really interesting point because I do think so much of me feeling rejected for the way that I am has to do with gender and race. Like, what makes a nice young girl? You don't talk too loud at the dinner table. You don't sing. You don't throw things. You
Yeah.
don't. You act
Well, I
in a
mean,
very
maybe we
traditional
still shouldn't
way.
throw things, but
Well, yeah, no, 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 you're right. Some of it is like etiquette. Like, so, my parents were are wonderful parents, and they did a great job raising like respectful well-balanced children. But yes, there is something to like feeling like you can't just be yourself as a woman in the home. And then when you leave the home, you have that. And then as a black person, there's tons of stuff you can't do, whether you're male or female. You can't be too loud. You can't be too rambunctious. You can't, get into a play fight on the street because who knows if they call the cops and then you'll all end up dead. Like those are the real fears that you growing up black is like. And so you are not allowed to do a lot of things. And I think that I intellectually understand that most of these things that this mask is protecting me from are refracted through the lens of gender and race. And so I think that's a really
Mm.
important point that you just touched on that I'm going to take with me is that those things are external. Those are not things, those are things that I was born as. They weren't things that I individually did make myself black or make myself female. So if somebody has a problem with these things because the package that they're coming out of is not a straight white male, that they're, accepting of violence or accepting of opinions and assertiveness, that has to do with their own internalized biases more so
Mhm.
than it does have to do with me.
That's
That
right.
was an aha, as Oprah likes to say, an aha moment that I think I'm going to take that with me because you're so right that it is so
Yeah.
outside of me.
It is outside of you. But you also brought something up that, like, I think is really important for us to acknowledge here, and there's the difference between, like, the masks that we wear within our inner circles, like, with our
Yes.
families and with, like, our
Hmm.
social circles, but then how do those masks extend out to like, the macro and, like, the rest of the world? And you brought up, like, as a Black person, you are taught that there are certain things that in public or just, like, as you're walking the streets, like, your bodies have learned to be fearful of what might happen if you are not presenting yourself a certain way. And presenting yourself a
That's right.
certain way really is, again, like, a facet of assimilating into whiteness,
Yeah.
assimilating into the very specific, like, cultural expectations of white Americanness, and I think it's
Hmm.
fascinating that for you, a part of that is intellect, because it's almost like if I can show society that I am smart enough, can I prove to you that my body is worth taking up space in this country?
That's a word, Ani. Because also I think intellectualism and intelligence is wrapped up in whiteness, like, that's who's assumed to have it as well,
Yeah,
and so,
that
the doing
part.
well in school, yeah, the doing well in school and presenting yourself with that is a protective mask because it makes you seem more white, is the assumption, and I think that that's
Yeah.
something that Black people have internalized, and when you're out in the corporate world, you have to utilize that bias because they're white people are the ones with the power, money, positions where they can hire and fire you. They're the ones that disseminate
Mhm.
funding from the banks. So you have to show up how you perceive they want you to show up, and what's going to make them most comfortable. Because, like, you can also be really, really educated on subjects that maybe white people aren't interested in. Like, you could be an expert on African American history or African art if that's not even a valued
But do
subject
they
to the
respect it?
people, the powers that be. Exactly. So, like, it's also being intellectual about the things that matter to white people. So, like, I know everything about European history. I know all about, like, the history of our country, about how white people feel about the history of our country. Like, people of color have to know everything about white people, and white people really don't have to know much about people of color. Like, how many
There
white people have you ever met that know about Armenia? That they could point to it on a map? Or honestly, I would say any American, but, like, do you feel like white America knows much about Armenia?
No, but it's funny that you say that because it's actually it's really funny that you bring that up because one of
No.
like no, but my best friend who I met out here, her name's Phoebe. I love you, Phoebe.
Love you,
Phoebe
Phoebe.
is we love Phoebe. Phoebe's a white woman from Nevada, and it's almost like the universe has been, like, priming her to be an ally
Mm,
to Swana people and, like, to Armenians
wow.
specifically because she does know a lot about the culture, and she, like, wrote a paper on I think it was, like, on the genocide back when she was, like, in school, and then she moved out here, and she made friends with a bunch of Armenians, and she's just been immersing herself in our culture
Wow.
for a really long time. So when I met her, she already knew so much about, like, what world I come from, and that's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing to me because I often find myself with new people in my life having to create a foundation of understanding of, like, why I am who I am, like, what shaped us, what made me this way. Because like, I'm not a white American. I didn't grow up listening to, Bruce Springsteen, like,
Say it
that's not
again,
my
because in
experience.
school, they'd be like, "Don't you know this song?" And I'd be like, "Absolutely not, I do not.
No, why would I know that song? I'm over
I
here
don't know Billy
listening to
Joel songs."
Demis Roussos and Harut Pambukjian, you know what I mean? Like, that's like but also ABBA and Stevie Wonder, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, all this
Yes.
to say the average white person, no, they don't know anything about Armenia or Armenians, and the little bit of information that they have is unfortunately coming from Hollywood and
Yeah.
Glendale and the Kardashian family, and I have
Yeah.
very specific thoughts on those things. I just don't think that it's encompassing whatsoever of, like, the richness of our culture and who we
Mm.
are as people. So, I was always that kid that was like, "I can't wait to tell these people about our culture. Let me tell you everything." So I would, like, make new friends and, like, love sharing about our food and our history
Mhm.
and all of that. But to your point, no, that's like an extracurricular supplemental piece of information
Yep.
for them because their world is just not centered around other cultures. It's just centered around, do you fit in with what I know normalcy to be? And if you are outside
Right.
of that realm of normalcy, well, that's weird. And then you've
How
got
where do
all
we
the
place you? What do we do
xenophobia.
with you?
Where do we place you? That's so real. Where do we
Yep.
place you? And I would like to think that, especially the person that I'm becoming, I'm a little bit unplaceable. I think,
Come
like,
on, I love that. Well, let's write a song about that.
can we write a song about that? It just, like,
Yeah.
you're allowed to be more than one thing. You're allowed to
Yeah.
fit into many, many, many different boxes such that there's so many boxes that you cannot be contained in the multitudes that you are. Like, why should we have to be contained? Because it's
Yeah.
safer. It's
Yeah.
safer to people. If they can label you and categorize you, it signals
Yeah.
safety to the brain that, like,
Mm,
oh, I know what to expect of this person. If they fit my framework for what this
mhm.
box is that I've placed them in, then there's some form of, like, safety in being able to predict an outcome, being able to predict who someone is
I
and how they're gonna
see.
respond to certain things. So,
I was
there's
gonna
that.
say, what do you think that fear is? Like, I've always liked having people around me that are different. Now, obviously, like, I was the one who was different often, so it makes sense that I would like that. But I find Americans, regardless of their race, if they are like American in terms of like have been here in their family for several generations, or like my family, I mean, we can trace it back to like the 1700s and stuff. Those like true blue Americans, whether they're black or
Wow.
white, they are very like myopic, I find, in terms of their interest in their cultures. How many people in the US don't have passports? They're not interested in travel. They're not interested in learning things about anything other than America. And why should they, I guess, if we have cultural and fiscal dominance over the world? That's one argument. But also, like, what is that fear when you say like fight or flight, comes up in the body because they wanna know where they can place you. If they can't place you, what is their fear? That you're going to do what? Interrupt their lives? Cause problems for them? Dismantle their society? Like, I just wonder, it feels like maybe for every person there's a different fear, but the collective fear is such that they all behave in a similar way, which is to shun those that are different and to denigrate other cultures. But I do always wonder that, like, what exactly like, you have an immigrant move next door, "Oh my god, they're Muslim." What is the big fear that what are they going to do to you that is so bad other than be different than you? It's a bizarre phenomenon to me.
I think it's like a it's all of the above, I think, that you've listed, all of those fears. But I do think in particular, and this is my theory, it has to do with a person's sense of reality and their beliefs being shattered. And
Mm,
that the fabric of this country is it's very rooted in I gotta be honest, it's very rooted in illusion. Like, the
mhm,
fabric of America is very rooted in the illusion of greatness
mm,
while ignoring the reality of how this country came to be and on whose backs this country came to be. And so from a very young
amen.
age, like, the American propaganda is very much like America is the best. We are the freest country in the world. And I know people will have their arguments about that because there are other countries that don't have the same freedoms that we do. And I don't argue that. But I do think that there is this illusion that's placed over people whose families have been here for many, many, many generations in that this is the right way to exist, and if you exist outside of this framework that you were given, that something is bad, or yeah, dangerous to your lifestyle, dangerous to your well-being. I mean, we see it with the xenophobia, we see it with,
Rampant.
placing the blame on Latin Americans in this country who haven't actually committed any crimes, and when really they have contributed so much to the things that we enjoy in our day to day, and yet they're being painted as these outsiders who need to go, why is there this fear that's being instilled in the average American of those who come from different cultures? So I am just, like, mirroring your question back to you. I think it could be many things, but I do think it stems from the way that we are raised here to believe
Mhm.
in the illusion of greatness, of nothing is better than
Yes.
Americanness.
And anything that challenges that could take away that greatness. And
Mhm.
so and so we have to protect it at all costs, and if that means closing our borders and making sure that nobody that's different than me comes in and hoard our resources that have been won off the backs of other people, that we have this wonderful way of life and all this wealth has come off of the exploitation of a lot of other people across the globe. So the idea of, to me, of having borders and keeping people out from enjoying in the riches that we've either stolen, exploited, outsourced, intimidated other countries in terms of like global trade so that we can get the
Yep.
best things and the best prices. Like there's so many ways in which Europe and the US has exploited the rest of the world. So to say that there are resources that can't be shared is absurd to me. But I think that that's a really important point, that like it dismantles seeing people that are different from you can dismantle your impression of yourself and everything that it's like when people find out that someone that they respected is a rapist, because that's something that
Yeah.
happens often very privately behind closed doors. And then it comes out much later that this person was actually not who you thought they were. And people have a lot of
Mhm.
cognitive dissonance being able to accept that about that
Yeah.
person. And I think that that is, even women who are predominantly the victims of sexual violence I'll see them defending men because it's a celebrity or an author or, just somebody in
Right.
let's up to the top office, Trump, because he represents something of value to you. For you to have to accept the fact that he's also this person is a rapist or an abuser is really difficult, because then what else isn't true in your life? What else isn't true in the way that you've always done things? What else is it could, possibly be dismantled tomorrow if this could be dismantled so quickly? So I understand why people are, I think a lot of it is very fear based, which is why, why a
Very
part of our
fear-based, and
podcast
also
mantra is about combating that fear.
combating fear. Who can you be if you lived without fear?
Yeah.
And I think even further too, on what you just said about, like, if this thing isn't true, then, like, what else in my life is a balloon that can be popped? I think it
Yeah.
also goes to say, like, if I believed this thing, and I trusted this thing, and I loved this
Mhm.
thing, and it's now turning out not to be true, what does that actually say about me? And I think
Mm.
that's why a lot of folks who voted voted MAGA will actually double down on some of
Mm.
the really awful things that they believed in at first, not because they believe those
Yeah.
things anymore, especially when there's, like, real evidence to show that a lot of the promises and the policies and the practices under MAGA are deeply harmful to other people. As folks are
Mhm.
starting to realize that, there becomes this sense of denial, because admitting that you voted for the wrong thing, or you voted for something that's so deeply oppressive to others and so awful to other people, it might reveal about you that, like, you are aligned with those things. Does that mean that
Mhm.
you're a bad person? And nobody wants to walk around thinking that they're a bad person. So what are they gonna do? They're gonna
Yeah.
double down and they're gonna pretend like nothing's wrong, because it's too
Yeah.
embarrassing and it's too shameful to admit that you might actually have some beliefs that make you a shitty person.
Or that somebody hoodwinked you. Like, if you felt like
Oof, yeah.
this person promised you this, this, and this, and they're not doing it, and not only are they not doing it, but they're actually harming other people, you would have to admit that this person really fooled you in a fundamental way that everybody thinks they're brilliant. So,
Right.
especially especially men, honestly, like it's why that old adage, like they can't ask for directions. Like you can't just admit vulnerability and be like, I was swindled.
Yeah,
This
no one wants to
person
get
like pulled the
got.
wool over my. Nobody wants to get got or admit that they got got. And so I think you're
Yeah.
absolutely right that that is some of it. And it would be so refreshing to see even more people come out and say, like, I participated in making this happen. I want to participate in dismantling it, because now I see that I was taken advantage of, or I let this problematic belief I have on this side color my overall decision. And now
Yeah.
I am wanting to combat that belief that I have and see how I can help repair the other damage that's been done. I think white people want to admit to anything except being racist. And it's the one thing that, just by virtue of living in this country, they all are to a degree. Even if they intend not to be, even if they were raised not to be, they all
Mm.
have to some degree a level of racism that is inherent in them. And the only way to dismantle it is to, first of all, recognize that all white people have racism inside of them because they're living in a system, whether they set it up or not, whether they try to perpetuate it or not. It's like the air you breathe, it's just part of who you are. And so, like, I think the first part of dismantling it, of course, is admitting that. But it's rare to even, that's why it's the first part of like DEI and anti-racism training is recognizing your privileges and recognizing the ways in which you are prejudicial. So even as a black person, I don't think I can be racist. I
Yeah.
can be prejudicial. I can be bigoted, but I don't believe that I can be racist because we don't have the power structures in place to cause effects on anybody else's life the way that the people in power do. But at the same time, like, I recognize that I'm privileged just by the fact that I grew up middle class. I'm privileged by the fact that I have two parents that went to college. Like, all of those markers that we know socioeconomically provide you with a better foundation to have a more stable life in this country. We know those things to be true. We've been studying them for decades. So if I, as a black woman, can recognize my privileges, I'm really expecting, people in the dominant group to start recognizing their privileges. And part of that is recognizing that you participate in racism and you participate in a racist system
I
and that you
think
benefit
that
from it.
that you benefit from it, that part, I think that people are really afraid to tap into that side of, like, what privilege and racism really is,
Hmm.
because it makes them feel like they're a bad person. It makes them feel like, "Well, I'm not the one that created these systems, so why
Right.
should I be sorry for them?" Or, like, I'm
Hmm.
not like, people have a very specific view in mind of, like, what racism is, what sexism is, and so they're like, if they're not saying those overt things and they don't have those overt, like, very on the nose obvious beliefs about those things, that they can't possibly be racist, and to
Right.
insinuate that there are nuances that they might be missing because they're not self-examining their actual identity and their place in the world in a way that people of color are forced to do from a very, very young age. They're taking any sort of, I don't even wanna say accusation, but it feels like an attack on their character. It feels like if you
Hmm.
and I'm saying this from a personal experience with a couple of people who with whom I expressed a desire for them to examine how they might not know as much about what I'm trying to share with them because they came from a different world as a white person than I did, and they
Yeah.
took it so personally. They're like, "You're calling me racist." I was like, "I'm not calling you racist. I think you're calling you racist. I think you're scared of being called a racist because you don't think that you are, and maybe you're not overtly, but by trying to police my perspective and, like, my
That's
voice,
right.
you are still upholding the standard of whiteness." And so the
That's
times
right.
that I have challenged people in, like, the views that they hold, like, as white people, there are moments where I
Hmm.
have been met with a lot of defensiveness, and their
Absolutely.
internalized shame about their identity has been projected onto me. But then on the other side, there are white people that I know who are they have so much humility to be able to do the
Yeah.
work of
That's
examining
right.
the self and not taking someone from a different demographics, like, issues with
Experience,
the
just they're
system
yeah,
personally. It's not
that's
personal. I'm
right.
not saying you as a person are a horrible person. I'm saying the system is one that we gotta work on how we show up and how you're
Yeah,
benefiting from it, and maybe that means that there are other people out there carrying a physical, mental, and emotional load that you know not of, not because you're a bad
yeah,
person, not because you should know about it and you don't, but because it's just not your experience. So can you, as a white person, be open to understanding someone else's experience without taking it personally as though something is your fault or that you're a bad person?
yeah. My experience is not an accusation against you. I'm just
That
expressing my
one.
feelings. Yeah. I'm expressing
Right.
my experience to you. Yeah, and you need
Right.
to I think we all can do that in all scenarios better is to be more empathetic and to, want to engage with somebody else's experience that whether it's different from ours or not. Just holding space for people, I hate that term holding space, but like it's a good one for a reason and people use it for a reason. Like that you literally just are listening and caring and giving somebody voice to their to situ a voice to their experience. That's how I would describe it. And I think that that's what's most important in those scenarios. And yes, I agree with you. There are a lot of white people who are, in the face of that, immediately get defensive, and it causes a ripple effect of continued harm to the person of color or the person from the marginalized group. And I also, like you, I have white people in my life who are, actively anti-racist, who are dismantling those systems in their own life, within their own family's life. And it's like so refreshing when you meet people like that. And I wish it was more, that was less the exception and more the rule. Even people I find that are overtly racist, because I agree with you. Some people think they're not being racist if they're not out. I'm not a sexist. I'm not out raping anybody or harassing anybody. I'm not a racist. I don't
Right.
burn crosses on people's yards. But obviously, we
Right.
know as people of color, there's so many things in between that. So, like, I was
It's
watching,
so
I
much
don't know
more
if you
than that.
watched this, there's so much more that you could be doing to that, right? So, like, the other day I was watching the Kevin Hart roast on Netflix. So it just came out.
Oh,
It's like
yeah.
repeating the roast of Tom Brady, but with Kevin Hart. They had like 15 comedians get up, and you know, I love a good roast. It's like part of like the canon of like American comedy is that, everybody is a target. You can say whatever you want during these roasts. What was crazy though, and what I've seen a lot of people talking about online though, in terms of like it being Kevin Hart, is that he had a lot of white comedy, friends, colleagues, and artists on
Mm,
his panel for the roast. And because he's a black comedian, pretty quickly it devolved into racist jokes about police brutality, making jokes
mm.
about George Floyd looking up from us from below, aka
That
in
was in the
hell.
roast?
That was in the roast, honey. That was in the roast. Now, some of
You're
these jokes,
fucking with me right now.
I'm not even remotely joking with you. And what was even more disappointing was seeing black comedians, including Kevin Hart, laughing at these jokes. So it made me think the other day when I was watching it, and I would say the same thing about like Lizzo was on the roast too. And of course, because she shows up and she's a plus size black woman, they immediately started talking about her being fat. Like every other joke was a fat phobic joke about her not being able to walk upstairs or, her thighs rubbing together, things like that. I get that a roast is at some level immature and it's supposed to be funny and everybody's supposed to be a target. Everybody makes fun of each other. I just do not find anything that is about people's personal identities in that way, like somebody's race, gender. I just don't find it funny. It's not even that I'm that sensitive. And for like all these people, like black men to be up there just like laughing at these racist ass jokes, it makes me feel like black people and people of color in general are born with like a mask that they use with white people when they don't want to rock the boat. When white people say
Yeah.
something offensive, especially when it's overt and they can explain it away under the guise of like, I'm joking. It's clearly a joke. Clearly don't actually think that. It's something
Yep.
so extreme. I'm making a joke about lynching. Clearly, I don't mean it. That's never something that somebody, would mean. And it's like, unfortunately, we have a 400-year history of people absolutely meaning it and absolutely doing it. So
Right.
it's not something that is funny to a person who could be the victim of those things. And so to
Right.
see any black people laughing at it, I at first recognized myself because I used to be in school laughing at racist jokes too, just to like get by, just to make it so that,
It's
I could get through the
survival. It's a
day and they,
social
I wasn't like
survival.
you said, you're part of the tribe. I just want to be like, I just want to have friends. I just want to go to school in peace. And so if that means swallowing my own pride and having someone make racist jokes and me explain it away or defend them or
Yep.
find it funny with them or forgive them when they say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be offensive. I was just joking." I'm seeing people at Kevin Hart is 100 worth 100 $200 million, if not more.
Yeah.
He can't even like actually express how he feels about racist jokes when they're happening in front of him. I would hate to believe that he actually like thinks they're funny. I don't think so. I think Kevin Hart and the rest of the black comedians there just do what all black people do when they are around a bunch of white people and they don't feel comfortable standing up for themselves and they sit and put on a fake face and laugh. And that mask to me is one of the ones that I took off earliest. When I was younger, I did it for a long time during school. And then once I reached college and I started studying sociology and African American history and gender studies, honey, I was off to the races and I don't let shit slide anymore.
That's right.
And so I just, it really hurt my heart to see that, to see like other Black people having to swallow that even at the highest level, even like on a live Netflix stream with hundreds of millions of
Yeah,
people watching, we
that's,
still
like,
have to
as
pretend to
high as
just
you
take
can
racism and
go.
swallow it. Yeah,
It's as
it's
high as you can
insanity.
go in
Lizzo
terms of,
taking
like,
fat jokes. How many more
social.
fat jokes does she have to listen to?
And they also say that good comedy doesn't punch down, and those types of jokes, like fat jokes and, like, racist jokes, like, that's punching down. Good
Yeah.
comedy questions the system. Good comedy pokes fun at, like, the people in power because the people in power don't actually have anything real to lose. Well, I mean, like, they do have things to lose, but because you are the one sitting at the top, it makes sense for the people at the bottom to punch up. But if you're punching down at folks or like on themes that are already struggling in some way,
Yeah.
that's not a generalization, but like in some way, you're not funny and you're not creative. And I think that it's really bold of you to call yourself a comedian if that's the kind of if that's the kind of
Yeah.
jokes that you're making that you're expecting people to
Yeah.
laugh at. Like, I think there's a little more evolving you need to do as a comedian if the only way that you get laughs is through sexism and racism, which is why I don't go to these fucking comedy open mics anymore because I'm so sick of hearing white men
Wow.
talk about how much they hate women. You know what I mean? Like, y'all are not fucking
Yes.
funny.
It's not
You're
funny.
not
You are
funny.
so right.
But the mask. The mask. It's like, do I put aside my true cultural self, my actual
Mhm.
identity? Do I abandon who I am in order to
Mhm.
fit in with others? Because the antithesis of humanness is loneliness. And ain't nobody trying to be lonely.
Don't nobody
So
don't nobody wanna be
so if
lonely
that
out here
means
in
that
these
I
streets.
don't nobody wanna be lonely, so if that means that I gotta put my emotions and my pride aside in order or like my self-respect aside in order to not be lonely and to be accepted by people, there are so many people who are willing to do that, and they're essentially selling
Yeah.
out, and I think that's part of what it means to, like, sell your soul. You know, they say, like, in Hollywood, people, like,
Mm,
sell their souls, like, I think that's
yeah,
part of it. That's definitely a part of it, selling out. That's a mask.
it is a mask, and honestly, and the masks are painful, like, I'm sure some of them went home and rewatched the roast, excuse me, and or just the flack they're getting online now for it.
Yeah.
I'm sure that hurts. I'm sure it hurts. So the mask hurts
Somewhere
the
deep
people
down,
who wear them. Yeah, somewhere deep down, I'm sure that they are
even if they pretend like
finding
it
out
doesn't.
about that feedback and are upset about it, and I don't mean to, like, continue to pile on to it, but at the same time, like, as a Black person watching that, it was very, very, very hard to watch, and it's very offensive, like, deeply offensive and painful to watch white people laugh and make jokes about the degradation that African Americans have experienced, like, especially when it comes to police violence, lynching, which was just another way of condoning state sanctioned violence, and that it's continuing to happen and there's no sign of it stopping. And actually, certain protections that we had in place are now being dismantled. To me, like, there's nothing funny about it. And you're so right. Like, I don't want to go see any more comedy where anybody is talking about women, their periods, making
You're not
fun of
funny.
gender stereotypes, making fun of trans or queer people, making fun of people of color. It's old, it's tired. It's from 1988. Get a new shtick and
So I have a
be
question for
smarter.
you.
Yeah.
If you were guaranteed the platform that you have always wanted, if you
Mhm.
were guaranteed fame and money and success and love in the ways like whatever that means to you. If you were guaranteed those things, but the price was selling out and putting that mask on for the rest of your life, what would you do?
God. I mean, it would be very easy for me to say, no, I would never. But quite frankly, when you put it like that, I don't know that I could just knee jerk say no. I think that what happens is, and I think a similar thing could happen to me or would happen to me if this was my option, is that you would say yes, thinking that wearing the mask, I've worn a mask my whole life. It can't be that painful. And then as time goes on, I think that's why you see a lot of celebrities like break down, have mental illness, have, problems with
It's too
their
much.
identity in the world is because they're wearing a mask for those benefits. And how much do I have to swallow just to get ahead in life and have the, like you said, the
Mhm.
platform that I've always wanted, the security I've always wanted, and the love and admiration that I've always been seeking. It would be easier said than done to just say no to that without knowing what those things feel like. So once they get into the process of selling out, they wouldn't even describe it as that. It's just what kind of like evolves over time, right? And then they get halfway through their career and they have like a breakdown. Is in part because they're managing all of these different masks, and like, to what we discussed earlier, the cost of the person wearing the mask is very high. It's high for us,
Yeah.
and we're not, half a billionaires like Kevin Hart. But the mask wearing is really painful, and it harms not just the person who's wearing them, but I think everybody who doesn't get to experience that person for their authentic self. And they're
And
paying
what
a price by
if
not getting to see that person.
See, I think it's easy for us to, like, paint things as good and bad because I think you and I especially, like, we really know who we are, and we're, like, not afraid to just be who we are. But I think then I see the other side of the coin where I think of someone who maybe comes from a very, very, like, a lower, or more challenging socioeconomic status,
Mhm.
who is given the opportunity to get their whole family out of poverty if they just do what they gotta do. So,
Yep.
on one hand, so if we're still talking about survival, there's, like, a different side of survival of, like, I'm not just trying to socially survive, like, I need to get my family fed and out of this house and,
Yeah.
like, in a better place. So if that means that I need to put my privilege of authenticity aside in order to eat, I can see why people would do it,
Yeah.
you know?
You're
I
so,
will
so right.
say I have had an experience where I have been faced with this. I wanna share it with you.
Yeah.
Two instances, both related to music. So, y'all know I've been a musician my whole life. I'm a singer-songwriter, and, there's 2 instances, and I'll give them both, like, really, really briefly. One was I was being courted by, like, a record label, like an indie record label, and I invited them to come see one of my live shows, and it was all original music, and they had been following me on social media for a long time, and I'm quite vocal about my beliefs on social media, and I support what I support, and it is what it is, and I'm always gonna stand up for the people that need to be stood up for, essentially. Anyways, so they come to see the show, love it, they were like, "Oh my god, like, let's talk outside." So I talked to these people outside and they're like, "You're amazing, you're this, you're that." They're like buttering me up. They're like, "We love this about you and like your lyrics and your music and blah and the look and the everything." And like essentially saying like we want you. And I was like, "Sick."
Yeah.
And they were like, "But." And I was like, "But." And they were like,
Oh God.
you're very open about your views online." And I was like, "Okay, and?" And they were like, we just think that you're alienating an entire audience, that could potentially fall in love with you and your music if you're so open about your values and the things that you believe in. So, if you could just
Wow.
you could just, like, reel it in a little bit, we could make you a star, honey. You'll be a fucking star tomorrow, you know? And I argued with them. I think if I wasn't so rooted in who I am and what I believe in, I would have taken it. I would have been like, "Yes, anything, anything for
Yeah.
that." But
Yeah.
really it was like, "Well, I'm not saying anything that I think is harmful. I'm being honest about standing up for people and human rights." Specifically,
That's right.
I was fighting for Palestine. I was saying free Gaza.
Ah, and they wanted you to be
And that's
quiet
that's
because you were supporting
they wanted me to be quiet about that. That's right,
Palestine
that's
State.
right.
Yeah.
So, they were like, "Well, just think of how many more people will love you, and, like, you're still brand new. You're not really in a place to alienate any potential
The
audience
people who
members."
aren't
Like,
brand new don't stand up either. They sell hundreds of
that's
millions
what
of
I
records and they
said,
don't stand up either, so whatever.
and you know what? I looked at them and I was like, "I'm gonna be honest with you, I already know that in this lifetime, I will either be absolutely fucking hated or I will be absolutely loved, but I will not be some lukewarm in the middle person who has no real beliefs and who pretends like they don't actually care about anything. And in fact, by being my authentic self, I'm going to attract the very people who are on the same page as me.
That's
And
right.
that's going to be my tribe as opposed to
Yep.
pretending, wearing that mask, shutting the fuck up. He was
Yep.
like, "Oh, well, look what happened to Kanye." And I was like,
He's still
that
rich and he still makes music.
insane. He was
And
like, "Well, he
the
lost
things
all
he was
like
saying
more than
were
half of
about
his
marginalized groups of
fans."
people.
Right, but I was like, now imagine if Kanye had came out with those views from the beginning, then those people he lost wouldn't have liked him in the first place. So I'm just doing the job from the beginning by finding my people from now. But you're asking me to put on this mask and pretend like I'm not who I really am, just so that what? I
Yeah.
can pretend like I believe in all the same things that all these other people do? Because I don't. I
Girls, I
don't.
don't. And quite
I
frankly,
don't.
like, it's not a good equation, equivalent, because Kanye was saying, like, disrespectful, racist things about other marginalized groups of people. You were not. Standing up for Palestine is not
Right.
speaking ill of anyone else. It's talking about
Oh,
what
but to some
one group
people it
of people
is.
deserves. Yeah. And standing up for an oppressed people. It has nothing to do with, to me, it's not the same thing as what Kanye is accused of and has been doing. And like, so basically what they want is someone who is cookie cutter, who doesn't speak their
Yeah.
mind, who is a perfect Armenian woman, just like we talked about at the beginning, the mask that we
Who's
get
not too
early, be quiet,
loud,
not too
not gonna
loud,
rock the
don't give your
boat,
opinion,
just
don't be
sit pretty.
aggressive,
Like,
don't hit me.
you're a musician. It's like when they tell artists to, like, shut up and just do their job, like, you're an artist, like, who
Yeah,
cares what you think? It was really giving that. It was like, "Are you
yeah,
willing to sell out so we can give you everything you want?" And the answer is, "No, I'd rather die." And the second thing, I'll make this even quicker. Essentially, so I am queer, I am pansexual. For those that don't know, pansexual means that you are attracted to a person for their essence and for who they are, and it's less about gender and more about, like, just attraction. So I'm attracted to men and to women. Men, I didn't have to be, but, not when that's how you know you don't choose your sexuality, because I would not choose that.
so true. If I could get rid of them tomorrow, I'd be like, I never need to see another man again. You're all disappointing.
Men, women, non-binary folks, and then the other side of my identity is that I identify as gender fluid. I love this female body that I am. I love this vessel, like I said, that I get to adorn in this lifetime.
I love that.
But internally, my soul, my spirit, I am neither, and I am both, and I am everything, and I am nothing. I just am. I just exist, and I love that about myself. But it's taken me a minute to, like, put the fear aside of the social stuff and to really reclaim that side of myself that I've always known since I was a
Yeah.
kid. It was never a struggle. But I bring this up to say one of my childhood heroes of music composition came to a show that I did, came backstage, was like, "I am enamored with your talent. Like, I want to work with you. I have music for you." And I was like, think of,
Yes!
like, your childhood
Yeah.
idol being
Oh my
like,
god.
"I wanna
Yeah.
work with you. You're amazing," right? So we started building this professional relationship. It was gorgeous. I was on cloud 9, pinch me, amazing human being, deep, deep reverence and respect for this person. They said that they want to get me an interview on, like, an Armenian talk show. This person's Armenian, because they're like, "I think it's time that, like, people get to know you as an artist, and I wanna introduce them to you." I'm like, "Amazing, but I have to tell you something. I'm gay." And I specifically said that to say, like, a lot of
Yeah.
Armenians are very, very, still
Oh,
very
I see.
homophobic,
I
unfortunately,
see.
and still
Mhm.
very one-track mind about gender expression and sexuality, and I was like, "Alright, let me do this man a favor and let him know this piece of information about myself, not because I'm fearful, but more so because if I go on the show and they find out about it later, they might, I don't know, be upset with me, and there might be some consequences and retaliation, and I don't know." So I was like, "Let me cover my bases and be honest about my identity in case
Yeah.
that changes his mind about wanting to give me this platform." So I told him, and at first he was like, "Well, who cares? 'Cause that has nothing to do with you being
'Cause it
an
shouldn't.
amazing
Yeah.
singer, so who gives a fuck?" But then as time passed, I guess he, like, marinated on it, and he calls me one day and he was like, "So what if you, like, hid that part of yourself and, like, didn't tell people that?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Brother, what do you mean?" And he was like, "Listen, I'm trying to get you fed. I'm trying to get your bills paid. I know so many composers and artists and people in
Wow. Dangling a
Armenia and
carrot.
in our community who will want nothing to do with you if they knew this information about you. It is so disgraceful. They will shun you. You will essentially be, like, blacklisted if people knew this about you."
Oh
He
my
was like,
gosh.
"I'm doing you a favor. Like, live the life you wanna live behind closed doors, but just don't tell people about it. Like, there's no reason to broadcast this information." I was like, "Well, I wasn't gonna go on the show and, like, broadcast it, but I'm not gonna
Right.
pretend like I'm not that thing because I am open about it on social media." Anyways, long
Yeah.
story short, he kept being like, think about it. Think about it. You could have the life. I could give you everything. All you have to do is hide this essential foundational aspect of yourself." And
And what he
again, this is my
probably doesn't
childhood fucking
understand.
hero.
Yeah. I know. I'm so
So I
sorry
was
that that
like,
happened 'cause that's so rejecting.
well, I ended up saying no. And it was really, really hard for
Good
me to
for
say no
you,
because it was dangled in
I'm
front of me.
sure.
But I was like, "Sir, I have the utmost reverence for you, and I very respectfully have to decline and say that if anything in this world asks me to change an integral part of who I am and my identity to appease others who have not yet opened up to the greater possibilities of life and identity, it's
Yeah.
not for me. God would
Yeah.
never, ever make me do that. So I
I
have
love
to
that, that you would
decline."
never have to portray yourself to get ahead.
If
And
you have
that's
to betray
that's,
yourself to get ahead,
it's a
it's not gonna
price that you
last,
don't
you're
wanna
not
have
gonna
to
be
pay.
happy.
Yeah. It's so true. Well,
Yeah.
how do we combat these masks that we wear, Ani? Do you have any tips, tricks, somatic exercises that we can use?
So many, so many. I mean, as an actor, and you know this, what do we have to do before we go on stage for something? You're given lines. What do you do with those lines?
You memorize them.
You memorize them, you
You
practice them.
practice them. Yeah, rehearse them. Yes, yes, yes.
You practice them, you rehearse them. So, one of the most amazing exercises that we can do is start practicing in the privacy of our own homes and specifically in front of the mirror the sentences that we are most afraid to say in the circumstances that require us to have our masks on. So that when the time comes and
Mm.
we're actually in that situation, it's not gonna be the first time we're ever saying that and the whole body is, like, shaking and you can't do it and your throat closes up. But if you continuously rehearse those sentences, your body's gonna be so used to it that when the time comes, you're just gonna be able to say it, and it might still be a little bit scary, but you will be slightly more accustomed to it.
Ah, that is really deep. And so, like, the sentences that you try to hide that are indicative of, like, what's going on underneath the mask, do you
Yeah.
suggest, like, people write them down and then repeat them in front of the mirror? How do you go through the exercise of doing that?
Yeah, it depends on what works is gonna be different for every individual. Some people connect more to writing, so if writing
Uh-huh.
is what works for them, that's great. But personally, my recommendation is using the voice and using it out loud. Using it out loud. Go to the mirror and think of the circumstances where you constantly stifle your own voice, and maybe it's a man, right? I'm gonna use a man as an example. A man is with his man friend group, and they're all making misogynistic jokes, and that man is
Mm,
afraid to tell them that he doesn't believe in the things that they're saying because he
yeah,
wants the boys to love him. He wants to
yeah.
be one of the boys, and that's all the only friends he has, right? I would say practice saying that thing of like, "Hey guys, I actually don't think that that joke was very funny." And stand on it 10 toes down, not like, "Guys, can we talk about something else?" Where's the certainty? No certainty. Where's the confidence? "Hey, guys, I actually didn't think that was funny." Practice saying it with a certain tone of voice. Practice saying it with, like, certain verbiage. Like, I don't know, upper inflection? It's a question at the end of the sentence? No, downward inflection. "I believe this. This is what I believe. This is what I believe. This is what I believe." So practicing using your voice in ways you haven't before, envisioning the circumstances that make you deeply uncomfortable and force the mask on, and then saying the things that you would say if you weren't scared.
Ani, you just blew my mind. I am going to start doing that today
What
because
would it be for you?
there's so many times where, like, I rewind in my mind and go, "Oh, I wish I had said this in the moment," or, "I wish I hadn't laughed it off. I wish I had, come
We
up
all
with a funny
do.
quip to." We all do it, right? So, like, I think one of the biggest things for me is, like, when I'm speaking with someone and they make mention of either my hair or my race, or they wanna talk about, like, Well, like the other day, I went to a bar with my sisters and my cousin, and some guys came to sit next to us, and immediately the guy's like, "Oh, I'm just some white guy sitting next to you, ha 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 ha," and I'm just like, I can't just exist and be black without someone mentioning it to me. Even if you're talking about your own race, but like you're walking into a place that's mostly white. So why are you coming near me
So
and talking about yourself being
frustrating.
white as if I can't tell that you're white? It's all because you see somebody of a different race and have to comment on it. And so I just laughed it off and said nothing. And now I'm thinking about it. If I had had the chance to say again, I would have said, when you mention race, it makes me uncomfortable, especially being in a room where there's mostly white people and we're some of the only black people here. I thought I could just be here as a person. I didn't know that I had to be here to you as a certain race or represent a certain race because that's how you're viewing yourself. That's how you're describing yourself. And I don't know you. You just sat down next to me. So there's no reason for us to be talking about race anyway. Like, which is a very long sentence, but I think like the core of it is that when you bring up race, when it's unnecessary, it makes me uncomfortable. That's the line that I probably have. I don't know that I've ever said that to someone. I either laugh it off or yell. You know what I mean? Like an inarticulate, accusation against them for saying something that's offended me, but not with. I think your exercise is really great because it identifies the vulnerability within yourself. Like it makes me uncomfortable, it makes me upset, it harms me.
Yes.
Versus like, why did you
Yes.
say that? Why do you want it? People don't respond well to that. It's never gone well, even though they may
Defensive,
deserve
right,
it. But like they can't hear what you're saying. And so I just love this
right.
idea of practicing this in situations that are low stakes when you're by yourself in front of a mirror, writing them down so that when the time comes, you can say them confidently and mean them and stand in your integrity because it's not something you just came up with. It's something that you truly believe. It's something that it may not be the first time it comes up that you're able to do it, but maybe if you practice for months and in a few months you'd be strong enough to say it. That could create such a ripple effect, like such a positive ripple
That's
effect
right.
amongst other people that you're finally, especially when you're in the dominant group, being able to bring these ideas to the dominant group. I think when a black person says something about race to a white person is one thing, a white person saying something to a white person about race is another. And I think that just like
That's
we need male
right.
allies to really stand up for women's rights, and that's what really makes the difference is people from the dominant group supporting the marginalized group. So, I
That's
hope
right.
everybody at home starts to practice that. I am going to immediately. So, thank you for sharing that, Ani. That was really,
Yeah.
really great.
You're welcome.
Well, hit us up on what is it? Healing Loudly the podcast at Gmail?
TikTok and Instagram, and our Gmail is healingloudlythepodcast@gmail.com.
Let us know what masks you're wearing and when you develop those masks and what you are going to do to feel comfortable taking them off. We would love to hear. So hit us up anytime. Ani, it's always a pleasure. I love you to death and we will talk soon. See you guys later.
Bye.